Hey, friends, welcome to the Self-Love Strong podcast. I'm super excited you guys are here. Today, we have an amazing special guest. Donna Hall is a
Hi.
mom and a passionate advocate for healing and empowerment. She is the voice behind the Hall Closet podcast, a gripping show where she shares her raw and unflinched story lower tier crime family in Philadelphia during the 80s and 90s. Donna's life is anything but ordinary, with a mother who spent time in prison for child endangerment and a stepfather who turned informant who helped many innocent people go to death row. Donna's childhood was filled with chaos, danger, and betrayal. But instead of letting her past define her, Donna has turned her story into a source of power, healing, and resilience. Now, as a podcaster, it's her platform to not only share gripping true crime stories, but she also talks about survival and finding safety and reclaiming personal power. Welcome to the show, Donna. I'm so excited you're here.
I am as well. Hello, hello. How are you? Are you able to hear me?
Good, man. Donna, your story is just, yes, I'm able to hear you.
Okay, good.
All right, perfect, man. I'm so glad you're here. Your story is just already brings you, that introduction brings me already to the edge of my seat. What was it like growing up in a crime family in Philadelphia in the 80s and 90s?
You know, at the time, and I tell the people this, a lot of people ask me the same question. And, at the time it wasn't, I didn't consider it a crime family. I really didn't know until I was much older. I mean, I knew that, we had a lot of issues with the law. So that isn't new to me, but I didn't really, realize how horrific the crimes, not necessarily horrific, but I just didn't realize that it was a crime family. It was just normal to me, if that makes sense. There was just a little.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. I imagine like in any situation, when you're in the middle of it, I don't know. Yeah, when you're in the middle of it, I imagine you really I can only imagine the age you're at too. You're like, this is just normal, right?
It was just what our life was. Yeah. And then I didn't realize how, so my stepfather was like probably the country's most prolific, notorious jailhouse snitch in Philadelphia. And I didn't realize the extent in which he went to put so many people behind bars that are innocent, including my brother. So that was, I knew that he had done that, but I didn't realize the extent of all the other, people that he created and wrote fake confessions for. It was pretty horrible to find that out, and to find out how my mom was involved as well. That was difficult. That I came from that, because I'm anything but, I'm that rule follower. But I got out young, so I was lucky. I was lucky that I was able to get out.
Man, that's really tough. You mentioned your stepfather was an informant and put so many people, and you said even mentioned your brother. I imagine in that situation, finding out he would even get your own family involved. How did that all, how was that fallout? I just imagine how you felt. What age that situation?
So I want to say when I found out that my brother, so it really started before that. It started where my mom was dating this man, John Hall, who she met because my brother was in jail. So my brother was in jail, and he was, had kind of became friends with this man who he thought was a doctor. His name was John Hall. So my brother basically set my mom up with someone that he met in jail while they both were in jail. So my mom and John started communicating. It's crazy. So at that point I was 13. So I was still home. And I remember her talking on the phone, with this and telling me that she had met this man. So when my brother had gotten out of jail, John had gotten out of jail, my mom was leaving and I wasn't living at home. So it was just my mom and my younger sister. But John didn't want to live in Bucks County, which is where we were living. He didn't want to be in Bucks County because he didn't have he wasn't able to cooperate with the police or the DA in Bucks County because he didn't have that relationship where he would get arrested, then they would help him find somebody within the prison system that they didn't have enough evidence against. And they would say, hey, we don't have any evidence against this guy, but here's the file on him. Can you come up with a confession? So basically he wrote these very elaborate, detailed confessions that were quite adventurous. Definitely not true. But in Bucks County, he didn't have that ability. So he didn't want to be in Bucks County. He wanted to be in Philly. So my mother basically left my 12-year-old sister home alone with, and to stay with her boyfriend in the city because he didn't feel comfortable being in Bucks County. So because of that, my brother found out that we all knew that she was home alone, but my brother was a little bit of an instigator and he was annoyed with John because my mom had given John a car and basically didn't help my brother out. So he was mad that, he was driving this car and my mom took it from him, whatever. So he, to kind of get back at John and my mom, called the police and called child services. Not to say that he shouldn't have done that, because in a world that we're living in now, I mean, obviously, if I were to find a 12-year-old living home alone, I would call child services and call the police as well. But it was just what our life was like. So it didn't feel, it felt wrong, but it just was what our life was like. Sadly, it's just, again, that's part of what I was saying. Like, I didn't really realize how criminal it was until I grew up. So anyway, so it started with that. My mom ended up spending time in jail. My stepfather also there were a little bit of issues with him because of that as well, because his name was now starting to come up as like, left the girl home alone, whatever. So there was this very high profile murder that had happened in Center City. It was a college student who was raped and murdered and dumped in a stairwell. She had her shoes on, she had her sports bra on, her pants were not anywhere to be found. And it was like really, really disturbing because it was a very nice neighborhood. She was, a student in law school, I think, or maybe I think she was in law school, but she came from a very influential family, I should say, out of Chicago. So it was just a really troubling homicide. The murder was horrific. She was beaten to death and raped, and found in a, position within a stairwell that was, just horrible. So I was actually working in Center City at the time. And, I had heard about the murder. I was very upset about it and fearful because I was, at this point, I think I was 18 or maybe I was 17. I don't know. I was working on 8th and Chestnut, and I was taking the train and the subway to my job every day. So I was quite alert and a little, it was upsetting and scary to be a young woman in the city about the same age as this Kimberly Ernest, maybe a little younger. But it was scary as a woman, traveling through Philadelphia. So I had a lot of, it was just upsetting. So I'm literally in the subway. I took the train down to, I forget where I took it, but I got off and then I would hop on a subway. And as I'm walking, I saw on a newsstand a picture of my brother's face. And it basically, my brother and someone else, and it said, it basically put his picture saying that he was arrested for killing Kimberly Ernest. So I picked the paper up, I bought it, and I was like, what the is this? I'm like, this is my brother. Like, first of all, I'm scared to death. Secondly, this is my brother who I know is a criminal, but he's not a violent criminal. He's like petty theft, robbing, stealing, writing bad checks, that type of thing. He's never been, while he was abusive towards me as a child, he was never like violently or sexually criminal. So I was like, what is going on? I was devastated. Obviously, I went to work. Called, whoever was in my life at the time. I don't even remember, but it was devastating to find out, that he was put behind bars. And so I had visited him. I took his kids to visit him. And, then I slowly started to find out that like my stepfather, was the one who basically set him up for that, or, tried to get himself out of a crime as always. And, tried to pin this on my brother, whether he did it to get back at him or he did it to get out of jail. He definitely, and my mom was an integral part of that as well. My mom went right along with it, telling the police that he told her as well. Yeah. Yeah. He was acquitted. So my brother did not do the crime. He was acquitted. And I believe that it was it started to be the downfall of my stepfather and his snitching, because he kind of, bit off more than he could chew. And Philadelphia police and Judy Rubino, who was the DA at the time, literally gobbled it up, not really doing the research behind it. In fact, it was the first case that Judy Rubino ever lost, the DA. It stopped her winning streak. Yeah. But given the facts of what we know, that my stepfather was, creating these false confessions and being this, jailhouse snitch, and also prosecuting my brother without any evidence. There was no evidence. The only reason my brother's name came up is because of my stepfather. So I think that was also the beginning of her demise as well. Judy Rubino's.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's really was a corrupt system back in the 80s and 90s, very corrupt. Also, since then, because my brother was beaten by the police officers during questioning, they now changed the way that, obviously now, but back then they changed the way that questioning had been done, and they started video recording because of what happened with my brother, which is, something really good came out of it.
Man,
great.
Donna, wow. Yeah, I mean, that is a web that I'm like, wow, man, to have seen all those gears. What did survival look like for you in that environment? I imagine, like, your mom's kind of siding with your dad, your brother is, going through, y'all are all, all these moving parts. What does survival look like for you in that environment?
So at that point, I had been on my own. So I've been on my own since I was 15 years old. I was renting a room. What I think survival has been for me throughout the whole process, it's where it gets a little interesting. What I realized in my 40s is that I was a product of an artificial insemination. Shockingly, my mom was very promiscuous, but for whatever reason, she decided to have, there's 5 children that, she gave birth to. And I was the only one that she received sperm donation for. So it was like this really bizarre thing for me to find out that I was a product of this sperm donation. And I truly believe, without any shadow of a doubt, that is why I was able to persevere and survive and cope. I think, believe it or not, those genes that I have, my father, who I have never met, my biological father I have not met, but I do know of him, and I've learned quite a bit about him, and he's an amazing human being. He comes from really good family. He's a good family man, good stock, so to speak. And I truly believe that because I have I have his DNA, I had survival skills that my other siblings just didn't have. Not to say that they're all, that they didn't have survival skills. I just think that mine were different. And so my whole life, even though that was normal, I had talked in the beginning of this episode about how this interview, that it seemed normal to me. There was a deep, deep feeling inside of myself that felt like it wasn't normal, if that makes sense. So even though it was familiar, even though this is what our life was, we just accepted it for what it was. There was this yearning that I had inside of me to get the F away and to be as far away from them as I could get. So again, luckily for me, I have those survival skills, I still believe, from my genes. And I was able to move out at 15 years old and get a job and go put myself through school. I got my GED. I worked and went to school full time and just started my life over, away from all of that. And it was helpful to be able to do that. And I think at almost 49 years old, I still have difficulty with the trauma that I grew up with, but for the most part, being able to survive that and really turn my life around and be a better mother because of it, and stop that, what do they call that? That generational trauma, like really stop it right in its tracks. Like, I'm not going to do this to my kids. I haven't been a perfect mother, no one is perfect, but I've done the very best that I could to raise my children and focus on them and love them and not do to them what was done to me.
Man, Donna, wow, that is just a powerful message in itself. Like, story. I mean, at 15 years old, I couldn't imagine making that decision. Like, hey, I deserve better, and I know I can do better. When did you realize that you just needed to break that cycle? Like, you needed to get out of there. It's a big decision for a 15-year-old when I think about it.
It is. So and again, it's another interesting story. I told my mom, I literally would go to bed at night and I would feel this restlessness, almost like, I don't want to be here. Like, this isn't for me. I don't want to be here. Like, I just felt upset all the time. It's like your nervous system is telling you, like, this is not good. So I remember telling my mom, I told her that I was addicted to cocaine. I said, I'm partying too much. I can't stop. I need help. Can you send me away? Now, when I was 12, I tried to commit suicide. So I had gone into like a mental health institution. Like, they put me in a hospital, like inpatient. I went inpatient. And to some degree, even though it was wild, I felt a sense of safety there. So I wanted to get away from my family and go back to, I wanted to be institutionalized, which sounds crazy, right? Like, I wanted, not institutionalized, but I wanted to, I just knew that it was crazy and out of control, and I felt out of control. So I said to her, I'm addicted to cocaine. And she, told me, no, you're not. I don't know what you're talking about. Whatever, shut the F up, like, go clean the house type thing. So I went to bed crying, and I was like, I hate my life. I hate my life. And I thought about, like, I want to kill myself again. And then I thought, you know what? No, I don't. I just want to get away. I just want to get out of here. So the next day I went into school and I told the nurse or the counselor or someone, I don't even remember who, hey, I have a problem. I want to, I'm doing cocaine and I can't stop, and I have a problem and I need help. So they made my mom put me in a facility. They made her send me to rehab. So that's how I got out, as I went to rehab. And, my mother never showed up to any meeting like that. At 15 years old, you have all these groups, then you have, individual counseling, you have all these different things. And they had family counseling that is required in order for you to really, it's, to help your recovery, even though I wasn't really addicted to cocaine. It like helped your recovery. She never showed up. So the counselor and I, or the counselors there, and I guess whoever was the powers to be, basically said, we don't want her going home. Like this isn't a safe environment. She's not going back there. So they sent me to a group home. So then I went and lived in a group home. So that's how I got out, by living in a group home.
Wow, that is a powerful story. I mean, I just think about being in a stressful situation. I know we've all had that feeling of like, man, I don't want to be here. But to have that courage to like, stand up to your mom, who I imagine, you're in probably a stressful situation already. But it's just, I noticed you said, I had that feeling of like, I just don't want to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Like, I'm not comparing stories, but I know we've all felt that feeling like, man, this is a bad situation.
Yes.
But the courage to keep going and asking for help, I think, was truly a courageous thing. Because most people, when you're in that situation, you probably felt stuck.
Definitely felt stuck.
What were some of the, yeah. But what would you say are some of the biggest like lessons that you had to unlearn from, imagine being in that situation and what you thought was normal? You're like, this isn't normal. What are some of those things you had to kind of?
It's a really good question. I feel like to some degree, looking back on my life, even as a mother, there were some things that I did bring into my motherhood that I wish that I hadn't. And I think it all stems from my desire to be loved, because I wasn't loved as a child. So you bring those abandonment, issues with you throughout life. And even as a mother, I've made decisions that were maybe selfish for me, and not, I don't, I didn't obviously abuse my children, but I wish that I could go back and change some of the decisions that I made that were selfish in the way that my mom was selfish. And I think that that's just what I learned. But I also think that comes from that trauma of not being loved. And it's really taken me years to find safety. And when you're in a situation where you don't feel safe, all of those past traumas, like when you're in a child, they all just manifest themselves within your body, and you make decisions that aren't necessarily the right or the best decision. So I would say the biggest thing that I had to unlearn was that selfishness as a parent. And sometimes my desire to be loved by the wrong person overtook my understanding to do what was right, if that makes sense. And yes, I'm talking about relationships, being in the wrong type of relationship. I was looking for love in all the wrong places, so to speak. And I didn't necessarily choose the best partners that were the best father figures for my kids. So I did bring that with me, unfortunately. But I think that, I hope and pray that I did a good enough job as a mom that, I don't continue that down the road. And I've learned really to love myself, because really at the end of the day, that's what people, men or women who were abandoned, who are unloved, and they're searching for love, really, they're just needing to give themselves that love and really fall in love with yourself. And That's really hard. I'm getting choked up. It's hard to do, because your whole life you don't feel good enough. You don't feel loved. You feel like that's just a basic human nature. It's a human, um, it's not human touch is necessary to live. They did a study, and I wish I had it in front of me, but they did a study. I went to massage school when I was 17. And I remember they told me about the study that had been done. I'm gonna look it up when we're done because now I'm interested. But they did a study where they took babies that were in not foster homes, but what are those homes that were I don't know. The name is
like orphanages, or maybe
an orphanage. Yes, orphanage. Yes. So they had these babies and they didn't touch them. They didn't touch the babies. They fed them, gave them the bottle, changed their diaper, but they didn't hug them. They didn't love them. They didn't rock them. And this study basically showed that those babies were not thriving. The babies that weren't being held, that weren't being loved, they weren't thriving the way the babies. And I don't know if it was a study done or I don't really remember what it was, but I'm going to look this up when we're done. But it is true that, being loved it's not a desire, it's a need. It's an actual need that you need in order to thrive and survive as a baby. So take that throughout life. When you don't have that, it just creates this huge emptiness inside of you. So I just went off on a tangent there. Sorry.
No, that was good. I 100% agree with you there, Donna. I mean, especially we've all been in those that we could all have maybe made better choices in, but it's like you said, you were in an environment. So what do you tend to do? You tend to go to things that are going to make you feel more comfortable. That's what everybody does. But like you said, I love the fact that you realize that I deserve. I think it was that moment where you're like, love, and I haven't found that throughout my life. But I love something like you said, like as adults, we can still learn that. Like you're like you said, we're all learning. Nobody's doing anything perfect. We're all learning through our way of life. This is experience, right? So we're not all going to have it figured out. But I love the fact that you're like, hey, you know what? I now realize what I didn't have, but I can find that. And it's really starting with that in your. And that's so powerful as you found that through that. The love that I'm searching for really has to start with me. That's so awesome, Donna.
And it's true. And it's one of the things that I like to tell all these young girls out there who are, posting all of these pictures of themselves and these, promiscuous outfits. Like, let's try to look for validation within the mirror as opposed to behind the camera, and trying to teach these girls that and teach them to look in the mirror. I'm enough. I love you. Like, I love you, but saying it to yourself, that's really important. And I do that. I look in the mirror and I say to myself, you're enough. You are enough. Right directly in my eyes. And like every single day I say it, I'm going to be 49 next week. I still do it to this day. Look at myself directly in the mirror. And I learned this from a guy who is actually in recovery. He helps men in recovery. He's like a big time sponsor in the Philadelphia area. We're friends on Facebook, and we had a conversation a couple of years ago, and he was helping me like work through a situation, and we just got talking, and and then of course my trauma always comes up when you're talking real life with people. And he said, I want to do an exercise with you just for fun. And he had me do it. And boy, that was like really powerful to be able to look at yourself. It's hard to do. It's a lot harder than you think. And when you don't feel good about yourself, it's even harder. So my goal with my podcast is, to talk about, it's interesting. My life is interesting. And anytime I talk to people, they're like, wow, what? Because I mean, we could talk for hours about the crime and, how this happened or that happened. But at the end of the day, anyone who meets me right now in my life would never expect that was the life that I grew up in. So I want to be that person who can speak to this younger generation, or speak to that guy or that woman or that girl or boy who feel like they are stuck in their family, they're stuck in their situation, whether it be a relationship, whether it be a family as a child, anything. You're not stuck. You can make your own decisions. You can love yourself and take that step to get out, to get away, and allow your body to really be your guide, because that's the guide, your body. My body was telling me that I couldn't live at home anymore. My body in relationships tells me, your body, that gut feeling that everyone talks about, your nervous system, it's huge, huge. Listen to it. It's hard, but listen to it.
Man, Donna, that is beautiful, man. I love that. That's such a powerful statement in itself, in a world that tells us to seek outside validation at every corner. I love how you talk. It really starts with you looking at yourself in the mirror and simply saying that you're enough. I think that's a simple but powerful practice. That just sounds really looking at yourself and realizing that you're enough, that you matter, and that you're loved, right?
Yeah. Yeah. When you love yourself, you can love other people, and other people then can love you. But you need to, if you don't love yourself, you're fighting an uphill battle. You really, and loving yourself and being cocky or stuck up are two different things. Some people say, and I've come across this through the years where, when I'm doing these exercises for myself and I'm, talking myself up to myself, but maybe in conversation with other people, it could come across as like you're, cocky, or you're stuck up, or you're stuck on yourself. No, you're not. You need to love yourself. You need to believe in yourself. You can love yourself and recognize your positive traits and what is good about you without being cocky, without being stuck up, without being better or acting like you're better. I don't think that I'm better than anybody. Although sometimes people do get that feeling from me, it's not the case. In fact, I spent my whole life not ever feeling good enough, so for other people to think that I would, think that I'm better than them, they're wrong, dead wrong, because I don't. And I don't judge other people. I see people with a different lens. Like, after everything I've been through, I recognize that people act certain ways because of their own insecurities.
Man, that is powerful in itself. I think it's many times, you have a powerful story. People are like, I really love how you didn't let your past define you, that you said, like, I can choose how my life is. I think it's many times we're in a same stressful, we try to bury it, face your past, and have realized that it doesn't have to define me, but I can not only grow from this, I can help others realize that they don't have to feel stuck as well. I think that's just a powerful message in itself.
Yes, and you bring up a really good point too, because you said you stuff it down, and I'm here. There's like a little bit of lag, so I'm sorry if sometimes I'm like really paying attention, taking a second to answer. But you said something just now that is huge, and I think people who stuff it down and don't, it's almost like you're keeping a secret. If you don't deal with those issues, you'll never be able to have meaningful relationships. And it's part of the reason why I'm so vocal and so truthful. People say to me all the time, I can't believe you're telling this story this way. And it's almost like you don't have emotion. I have plenty of emotion. I'm just not keeping any secrets. These, when you keep a secret, it literally prevents you from having a meaningful relationship. And that can be a secret of something as simple as, a secret within a family, or what has come out a lot of people have come forward to me, sending me these amazing messages, how I'm helping inspire them to be able to share their truth. And that truth is that they were sexually abused as a child and never told a single soul. That is going to affect you. It's really important to be able to talk to someone about it. You don't need to talk to your spouse or your friend or your parents or even your brother or sister, but talking to someone and getting that out and realizing that it's not your fault. I think we feel guilty. We feel like it's our fault that this happened. What did I do to make him do that to me? What did I do to make my mom not love me? How can I be better? Or what did I do? At least for me, I've always felt this intense guilt. And I think that is huge for a lot of people who are hiding the secret of their own abuses, children or even adults, even women who are in bad relationships where their husbands, abuse them, and they don't tell anybody because they don't want to be judged or, whatever the reason is. Keeping that secret really affects long term. So as soon as you said that, it just reminded me, like, it just really clues in. It's really clues into what causes people to to not be able to get out of that type of lifestyle too, when they push that down. I push it down, and then you don't realize that you're doing the same thing that you hated your mom or dad for, because you're not really dealing with what happened.
Man, Donna, wow, that is just wow. Because I'm here when you said, like, if you don't deal with it, you'll never really have meaningful relationships, and it really makes me think, why is this keep turning? But now you're like, how was somebody get in the same relationship with somebody who has done that in the past? So you wonder why, how many things just get stuck in a cycle. But that's so true. It's pushing down that we don't get over are affecting us, and we, just because we think we're pushing them down, they're still affecting you. And until you deal with them, you really aren't able to be. Really love that the power, like you had the courage, because it takes courage. We understand that it's not. I love what you're saying. It's not easy. It's going to be challenging, but you can ask for help. It doesn't have to necessarily be your neighbor or your spouse, but you can ask that help. And man, Donna, that's all.
Yeah, it's been a journey, and I'll tell you, the podcast has really helped me, believe it or not, being able to share and put this stuff out there. A friend of mine had messaged me yesterday and said, "What's the purpose? Like, I heard your first episode. What's the purpose? You just want people to know what happened to you when you were a kid? Like, that's embarrassing." And I'm like, "No, that's not the purpose. The purpose is, yes, I went through this, but look at where I am now. Yes, it's vulnerable, and it's sharing really horrible things that happened to me, but look at where I am. You don't need to be stuck." And so while I'm telling true crime, and while it is definitely true crime, and I get into the nitty gritty of it towards episodes 5, 6, and 7, it's really about finding purpose in life and helping other people. And you don't need to be in a true crime family in order to take something away from my podcast. You don't. And all of the feedback that I've gotten has really shown that. And it's been such an amazing experience. I got to be honest. Podcasting, it has the power of podcasting, and, just finding my purpose through it has been life-changing. And meeting people like you, it's been great.
Awesome,
Donna.
So yeah, man, I really love how you were talking about. Hey, yes, definitely. Make sure you tune into the. So, what would you say is what would you say has been one of the most unexpected parts of starting your, sharing your your story publicly on your podcast? I know you briefly mentioned how people are reaching out to you, having their family share Any other unexpected things?
Oh yeah. I would say definitely the most unexpected thing. Well, honestly, the most unexpected thing was the fact that my brother Herb, who I talked about earlier, that my mom and stepfather set up for that murder of Kimberly Ernest. The most unexpected thing that came from my podcast is that he went from basically, I don't want to say badgering me, but he did not want me to tell the story. He did not want me to do this podcast. So he continually kind of ridiculed me, tried to get other people to be angry with me, sent me a lot of threatening text messages that he was going to sue me and all of these things. So the most surprising thing for me has been that by him hearing me tell my story has helped him want to share his. And that, I think, may very well be the most impactful thing that has happened with my podcast, is that my brother, who has been very quiet, keeping the secrets, not wanting anyone to know, not wanting to share, now is coming forward and saying, okay, I want to share my piece. I'm not really ready, and you're making me, because you're not really telling the story the way I want you to tell it. So now I'm going to tell it. And I think what he doesn't realize is how healing that's going to be for him. So that's been the most impactful. And episode 7 is him shockingly sharing his story. It was completely unexpected. It wasn't where we wanted to go with it. It's been a process. But yeah, so that's been the most surprising thing that has come out of my podcasting, but really, truly also the amount of people that I'm impacting and messaging me, telling me how they're going through such a hard time and how helpful it has been really shocking as well.
Man, that is so awesome, Donna. I love your story. I mean, we got to listen to episode 7 now. Like, I gotta hear this episode, man.
It drops on Tuesday. We're recording. I'm actually
for somebody. Okay, you guys. Hey, it drops on Tuesday, you said?
Yeah, I'm sorry. There's a lag. Yeah. So it drops on Tuesday. When I'm done with you, I'm recording a little couple pieces for it. And yeah, it's dropping on Tuesday. But you have to listen to the whole thing and really to get the impact of how he's been sharing.
Yeah. We'll listen. So from somebody listening to this, struggling with trauma, what advice would you give them?
So if somebody listening to this who's struggling with trauma I'm going to say it like I said it earlier, listen to your body. Listen to your body. If it doesn't feel right, it's not right. If you're laying in bed at night and your body doesn't feel right with the person you're laying next to, and I'm not talking anything other than that gut feeling that you have, that feeling within your gut, just listen to your body, and get help. There's so many people out there. Message me, there's so many people out there who would love to just sit there and listen to your story and remind you, that you're not a lost cause, that you mean something to the world. And, that it's your trauma doesn't define you, period. Period.
Man, I love that, Donna. It's so powerful. Thank you so much for sharing your message, your story of it's just truly courageous, resilient. I mean, it had us on the edge of our seats. I know we can connect with you and listen to you on the Hall Closet. How else could listeners?
So on my website, the Hall Closet podcast, it's such a lag. I'm so sorry. So the Hall Closet podcast, you can message me there. You can listen to my podcast there, but you can listen to them anywhere. And on all the social media sites, it's all the Hall Closet podcast, YouTube, TikTok, And on TikTok, I go live, which is really fun because listeners come in and they ask me questions. So I try to do that a couple times a week, just go live so people can talk to me. So many people have reached out saying, just 2 days ago, someone had reached out and said, I'm devastated because my child can't hear and needs hearing aids. And I held your kid, 6 years old. And, I was like, wow, like that's so hard to deal with. That is, it has nothing to do with like childhood trauma, but it's just this woman who's dealing with the fact that her child is deaf and needs hearing aids to maybe possibly hear. So being able to talk to her and help her through it, it's been fun. It's been a fun, thing.
Man.
So you can reach me on TikTok's another way to get in touch with me.
Awesome, Donna. Thank you so much. Hey, you guys, perfect. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make it simple for you guys. I'm going to put Donna's podcast under here. I'm going to put her website under there as well. Make sure you follow her on the website, follow her podcast. Let's listen to that full thing so you can get, really in depth. That's what she has on her podcast. But hey, you guys, don't let this be the last time you hear from Donna. Go listen to her on all of platforms. Reach out to her on social media. Tell her thank you so much for this episode and for sharing her message. But like Donna said right there, that your doesn't define you, and that you matter and you're loved. Thank you guys so much. Take care.